This is interesting times. How many of you are using ChatGPT now? How many of you are using Claude Code? Very nice. So we've been in AI for last 16 years. We were building chatbots in 2009-10, super early at that time. So I've been there for a while. Lots of errors in building technology, entrepreneurship, investing, and policy. I set up the first AI-focused venture fund on AI called Pi Ventures, and also set up the first AI and research technology park incubated in Indian Institute of Science called Art Park. So together, between the fund and the research park, have invested, incubated, supported around close to 51 companies in AI and robotics space. And what I'm actually going to share with you, I've been nominated as one of the top 100 AI people in India, but I think those are things that keep happening. I also helped in writing the National AI Strategy and the 2 missions that came out of it. I contributed to writing of the India AI Mission and NMICPS, National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber-Physical Systems. Now we are building Bharat1.ai, and I'll share with you what we are trying to do there. But here is a quick view. How many of you can identify or know about this story about New York in 1900? People were debating about what to do with the horse poop, because everybody was going around in these horse carriages, right? And there were a lot of them. You can see in the pictures, right? Like so many people are moving, right? So they called a meeting as to figure out like what they should be doing with this horse poop. And in just 13 years, how many horse carriages can you spot in that picture? None. So that's the speed of change. Once humans, we adopt a technology, we move so fast. And suddenly the problem narrative may completely shift. If you were to look at 2033, how would this New York Fifth Avenue might look like? So if you look at 1900, it was built for horse carriages. 13, it was built for cars. Maybe 2033, it might be built for AI, right? And it may look very different, much different than anything else. So the places that will adopt and innovate will create the future. And that is something that we are seeing today. How many of you have heard of OpenClaw? How many of you have agents running around there? Okay, fantastic, good to see. Yeah, so this is an early science. So post ChatGPT, which was a big breakthrough, everybody could ask questions and it will respond back. Agents are very different because they have agency, right? They can do things on their own. And with OpenClaw and NemoClaw, which NVIDIA is doing, you can set up your own agents, right? And that is actually very powerful, because in some sense it's kind of like the early birth of a agentic operating system which is going to take off. And it's very important because if you see right now you have, so the intelligence that we have, although all these systems, foundation models, they're so-called foundation models, right? But which of the foundation models are you guys using or playing around with? OpenAI family, how many of you are using OpenAI? How many of you are using maybe Claude, Opus or Soni? How many of you are using homegrown models like Sarvam? Have you tried? No? One. Okay, interesting. So these are still very early. Technically, if you ask me, they're not foundational at all, right? The reason why I'm saying so is that because they're not able to generalize well across all the tasks. They're working well in some domains, right? So if you really ask me, what is the general intelligence stack, or people are talking about AGI and all as if it's going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen. Human intelligence is very, very unique. 5 years back, somebody actually asked me during one of these interesting sessions that, you're talking about, machine intelligence, but have you explored human intelligence more deeply? And have you explored human consciousness? And I realized, no, I haven't. And actually, I hired a yoga teacher, a guru to teach me, like, okay, how can I go inside my mind? How can I explore a lot more deeper? And what I realize now, after trying to meditate for quite a while, that the place where this creativity comes from, the uniqueness of human mind comes from, is very, very different. In fact, yesterday I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he was telling me about his conversations with the Indian astronaut that recently went in space, right? So for 7 days he struggled to adapt to the fact, his brain struggled to adapt to the fact that there is no gravity, right? Things may be floating, right? Come to think about it, right? In just 7 days, the human brain adapted to the fact that there was no gravity in the space. And when he came back, again, it took him a while. In fact, he broke a laptop because, at home, he was actually trying to keep his laptop in the air, then it fell and it broke, right? So imagine, right? Like, our brains are so plastic. We know how to drive our cars, we know how to make food, we know how to take care of traffic on the way, we know how to take care of the complex assignments, right? So we are doing all these different tasks with one single brain on 20 watt, right? To do equivalent things, it is taking us 20 megawatt. So look at the energy difference, right? So my sense is that we haven't reached the foundation model yet. Maybe we will reach a useful generalized intelligence of some sort, maybe not equivalent to human being, but it doesn't need to be equivalent to human being, right? So what I see very clearly is that LLMs are great. They're working well for languages and creative reasoning. Then we are going to have neurosymbolic, which is going to work really well for maybe verticalized applications, which are very tightly, narrowly defined. Then we might need world models, which will allow AI to be grounded in the physical world. And it's very important to keep that in mind, because amid so much of marketing hype, we forget, right? Because everybody says, oh, foundation model. No, that foundation is a bit rocky right now. So you may not be able to build completely on top of it without human in the loop. So in fact, Terence Tao is one of my favorite mathematicians. He wrote a very nice piece where he said that it's not AGI, but AJI, artificial jagged intelligence. Because in some areas it is really good, but in other areas it is not that good. So you need the human intelligence to fill up the gaps. And that is something very important to keep in mind, because this is a model that India is trying to adopt, right? And that's why we are saying humanity-centric perspective. Why? Because till we reach AGI, we don't know, maybe 15 years, maybe 20 years. But human intelligence combined with this jagged intelligence is still going to be good enough for a lot of tasks. And that is the ecosystem that we are trying to create. So imagine all of you gets to build your own agent, right? Now that agent could, surf the internet like the way you do, right? Maybe read up all your emails, create a reply, right? And keep it ready in the draft. Maybe you could review it and then you could push it. And if the challenge right now is that if you write with any of these LLMs have their own style of writing, which is different from the way we speak. That's why it's very hard to read any text which is written with AI. I'm not able to comprehend it. Or if I'm writing it to someone, they can't see me writing that, right? So it becomes a bit jarring. But imagine if you flip that narrative. Everybody among us, right? In India, we have 900 million people. Imagine each of us gets to build their own agent. And that agent can then multiply their effectiveness by 1.5x or 2x, right? It will be a very different world, because we have 1.4 billion people. Out of that, 900 million people are in this demographic dividend, right? 15 to 64. Imagine all of us are able to multiplex how much volume of work we would be able to actually accomplish. And that's a vision that we are looking at. We call it universal basic intelligence. So how do we create universal basic intelligence for everyone? So if you look at it, it's important to understand this carefully. So when we had agriculture economy, right, the person who actually had the strongest set of muscles, he was very prized, right? Like he was the most valuable guy. Then machines came in, and then that guy was no longer needed. You could have women and kids operating the machines. So brawn got democratized. Similarly, in AI age, the intelligence is going to get democratized a lot. So in that age, what kind of working and living would make sense? It's very important that we imagine that, because if I look at by 2030, 35, we're going to have 7.5 billion people with 30 billion intelligent machines. They'll be connected together, and that will form the core of the AI economy. So just like the way in the industrial economy, industrial cities were born, which actually were built for physical infrastructure. You had road, rail. Similarly, for the IT economy, we had, we built the digital infrastructure. We built connectivity, undersea cables, internet, Wi-Fi. Today we take it for granted, but they were not there, when I started my career, right? 25 years, 26 years back. Similarly, in the AI economy, we are going to have, along with physical and digital infrastructure, something called as cognitive infrastructure. How would these agents work? How would the robots will work? How me, agents and robots will form a digital mesh of some sort, right? Where the information exchange, intelligence exchange could happen. So what I see very clearly is that the future, which country will take the best, will become the most place where everybody will be building, would be probably the country which will nail all three infrastructures together: physical, digital, and cognitive infrastructure. And that is very important, because even though these are early rays, everybody keeps saying that, oh, OpenAI is so ahead, or Claude is so ahead. Where is the notion for us to compete? No, it is still, after spending 16 years in AI, I can tell you that we are still just starting to scratch the surface. So if we are able to build this infrastructure, which can allow us to, create on top, that actually going to be very interesting, because it could create, a completely new paradigm. So that's where we're trying to bring together this, it's almost like, Station F on steroids, or Y Combinator on steroids. We're getting almost 10,000 people working in AI together in one small place. And the very thing that I talked about, right? Like, how do you link human identity? So the good thing in India that we have, Aadhaar, which is digitized human identity. So I could actually embed that in the agents, because if agent is acting on your behalf, how do I know whether it's you or not, right? Like, if you come to me and say, okay, I need 500 rupees, your agent is coming to me and asking that, I'm your friend and I need 500 rupees from you. How do I know that whether it's really you or not? So in India, since we have Aadhaar, what we are seeing is that there is a way in which we could actually create these agents which are actually tagged with this kind of human identity. So imagine, just like we have kids, you may have AI agents which sort of like your kids, and you can get to train them, you can get to make them better, and then there is a risk reward model, right? So right now all our society is built on a kind of risk reward model, right? Like, you go into any company, you work and you get paid, right? Now imagine if your agent goes into a company and it works for you and it gets paid, and through that you also get some reward. Then I would be interested in putting more and more effort in training that agent, making it better, right? So this is a kind of a system that we are thinking about, right? Like, how could we experiment it? So here, we are trying to do it with limited set of people. With 10,000 people, we're going to experiment and create that. If you're building any AI startup in this space, we would love to talk to you. If you're a large company which is trying to set up an AI co-innovation lab on agentic and physical AI, we would be happy to talk to you. We have 13 university partners. So if you're researcher or AI research lab, we'd be very happy to talk to you. Because we have to understand this, that the country that will actually be owning the most trusted cognitive infrastructure will win the future. It's not the one who's early, right? See, if you cannot trust the agents, it is very hard for us to build on top, right? So if the agents don't have identity, like, how many of you are using dark internet or have used any of those browsers which, yeah, very nice. So I have a few, who are risk takers. Not easy for everyone, right? So there is a reason why there is HTTPS, right? Because we're like, oh, it's going to be secure, my identity will be secure, right? See, internet started to make sense when you had, you could set up a user and the password for it, right? And then we could personalize it, right? Similarly, AI revolution will start to make sense when we can create personal agents which can be trusted by us and also can be trusted by others. And I think that is very important because we are still very early, right? So if you really see, and this is a slide I wanted to show you. I don't know whether that. See, so in AI we are thinking, oh, everything has happened. No, we are only here, right? So you can see AI agents, right? So first was ChatGPT, it was information as an API, right? Now we are doing work as an API, right? So that's where the AI agents are. However, there's a whole world out there which is physical in nature, right? So all of that is still yet to be cracked properly, right? Navigation as an API, hands as an API, eventually it will be humanoids as in, so the whole physical intelligence is an API. So, and then how this physical agents will work together, right? So there is a lot of, innovation yet to happen, right? So, and that's where I see that if you are young, you're building, you might be actually be in the ride of your life because there's so much about to happen now. So I look at like right now with information as an API or work as an API, we are only disrupting the digital part of the workflow, right? Maybe coding, right? But navigation as an API, hands as an API, physical intelligence as an API is going to disrupt, how do we build infrastructure, manufacturing, mining, agriculture, healthcare. And so it's hard to imagine now, but by 2030, I suspect that a lot of you would actually have a personal agent working for you. And maybe by 2040, some kind of like a personal robot for you. Some days you may not like to go to office, right? So your agent will go or your robot will go on your behalf, attend meetings and come back and update you. Or maybe this is an interesting future, but that's the future we have to build towards. So what we are doing now is that this is the AI cluster, we are getting it ready. So the phase one is where we are trying to see, can we do this Aadhaar based, digitized human identity based agents. The second one is where we are actually proofing that in real life. So you have the agentic systems in a 70-acre, we're calling it a living live lab. It's a physical city that we're building. And this will be it's a digital physical city. That means it will be having 25,000 people together with 25,000 agents and maybe 6,000 robots. And the idea is that we can actually get all of these to generate data, which can be used for frontier AI research and eventually come up with this a kind of like an AI brain, which could run these cities way better than currently we are used to, right? It takes a long time for us to travel around. Maybe these cities are going to be interesting. Other important perspective to understand is that there's a fundamental shift required in us to think about AGI or human-like intelligence, right? So far, all our generative AI breakthroughs are based on predicting the next word, right? Because we had internet, right? We had internet, and so that we could condense it into a giant brain and then we could query it, right? But we don't have the internet for the physical world. So that's why we're building this city. The idea is that we actually will have data about this physical, internet, digital physical city. It is going to create 1 exabyte of data each year for the world models. And we feel that it could potentially become like a CERN for AI, right? Like anybody who's looking at exploring the frontiers of AI may head to some of these places. So it's a vision. We're very quite far, from actually getting to AGI. But I think pushing the boundary is going to be very interesting. If you are, young, or if you're not young like me as well, please continue to do 3 things for yourself. One, what I call as learning to learn, right? So all of us, we used to think that the learning stopped as soon as you cleared college, but that's not true. AI is going to change a lot of our workflows. So the first vector is going to be learning to learn, right? Like challenging yourself so that you can keep learning every day. The second vector personally for me that I've been looking at is like all our systems so far have been based on scarcity, right? So Adam Smith wrote that massive book on wealth of the nation, amazing book, which proved that the wealth of the nation is dependent upon the human resource, which is scarce at times. What if that starts to go away, right? With agentic systems that are coming in, that may start to happen. So we'll have to move our thinking from scarcity to abundance. So when the resources are not scarce, they are abundant, where does the society seek value will become very important to understand. Third is money to fulfillment, right? So money was a proxy for karma. Whatever work we were doing, we were able to earn money with it. Now as more and more work may be done by AI and the agents, that needle would shift. So personally, you might have to think before doing anything that not just how much money it is going to make, but maybe also start thinking how much does it make me fulfilled. So having these three reflections every day could be very interesting. It's exciting times. It's also new. It could be scary times. You see all these headlines saying your job will go away. Yes, your job will shift. There are 117 million new jobs are coming. Who will get those jobs? Who are really better prepared for it. So just like the first slide that I showed, right? The place that will adapt and innovate will create the future. So make sure that future is you. Thank you very much.